I was checking out that red line across. It's not it's not giving me that yellow I had, um thing it does sometimes when it's gonna give me a problem. So that's good. Uh, I really don't know. Um, we've had this happen before, but it's been a while since we did 2 times. If it happens again, like I probably just shouldn't come back until tomorrow and just reboot everything. But maybe I just move it really, really slowly, not not fumble around too much. Was it so just maybe I really should, like you said, like a cat, slither slowly. It gets turned back. Hmm. Okay. Jeez. Mm, okay. I say yeah. I say yeah. Okay, where was I? The vector being the increased salience of assorted signals involving health and medicine and professional expertise. Probably that improved the efficacy of most wellness therapies by an average of 9% over results at its previous location, which was on busy Fullerton Avenue between a Firestone and an Arby's. The glass exterior of this new wellness location was entirely frosted and opaque, with a sign hanging above the door that the staff changed daily depending on the clientele and the therapies under review. If a patient, for example, strongly believed in non Western and alternative and what might be called indigenous forms of healing, and wellness was testing some kind of aerobic massage that balanced one's primary life forces, then the clinic might put up the sign with the tribal typeface. Oh, there we go. This is why we have the typefaces. Whereas if a client responded more to innovative bodily reprogramming and alchemical hacks, the keto folks were currently excellent examples of this, as the bulletproof bans had been a few years earlier. The staff would put up the sign evoking something more sleek and futuristic. It's like more block based wellness. Or if the client was into things more quirky and artisanal and hip, as when wellness was testing an oolong energy drink on a particular young tranche of urban professionals, when they might display the sign that looks like a silk screened handmade one off. Some of their signs evoked class and heritage and old money luxury, which was useful for certain essential oils involving pine or cedar or sandalwood. Essentially, the omnibus scent of expensive handmade carpentry. Other signs evoked a strict aesthetic minimalism, which, of course, was the underlying metaphor for any kind of cleanse. juice, celery, cabbage. The idea being that you were absolving yourself of every unwanted cell and molecule in your body, leaving behind only the cleanest, skinniest, most minimalist you. Hence the sign, and it's wellness in like a very skinny print. They had many such signs in their back storage room, each of which had been tested for its salience and efficacy. This week, Wellness was working on a new diet supplement called Petebog Belly. The story behind this supplement was that archaeologists had recently uncovered the remains of a Paleolithic man in a peat bog somewhere in the northern UK. The man being so incredibly well preserved in the cold mire that forensic anthropologists were able to not only identify the specific bacteria present in his lower digestive tract, but also clone and reproduce these bacteria. This was significant because such bacteria were the helpful critters that existed before the industrial wave of unnaturally processed food came along and genocided them out of our own modern guts. And so, what this supplement claimed to do was restore one's microbiome to the state nature and evolution had originally calibrated it, which was helpful in all sorts of ways involving digestion and immune system health and mental acuity and weight loss. It was one of several new products to recently roll through wellness related to microbiome and gut health, which was turning out to be the health trend of the year. The supplement came both in pill and powder form. The latter meant for consumption via smoothie, and the job of wellness was to evaluate which of the many variables color, smell, texture, taste, packaging, dosage, and what was called therapeutic context made it most effective. The sign out front was one of the many dimensions making up this last category. Context. And after lengthy debates about the psychology related to the term peat bog, they had decided on a sign with the most old-timey British flavor. Wellness. It's got kind of little edges. Yeah, those medieval fancy prints. The thinking here was that the strongest association clients had with the word peat involved Scotch whiskey. And so the most appropriate sign would be one that emphasized antique UK tradition, smartly leaning into the conceptual cluster surrounding peat rather than the one surrounding bog. Elizabeth was sitting in the small conference room where new clients were evaluated. She had been interviewing patients all afternoon, people who had been referred to wellness by a few select doctors around town, suffering from peptic ailments that were relatively minor and non-life threatening, but also chronic and annoying. Persistent indigestion, abdominal bloat, irritable bowels, unrestrained belching, mid-meal fatigue. Elizabeth was reading the intake form for her final patient of the day, someone named Gretchen, who apparently had not been referred by anyone, but had instead reached out independently and made her own appointment, which was rare. Wellness tended to keep an intentionally low profile, and Elizabeth was wondering how she might tactfully ask this Gretchen person how what she'd heard about wellness when Gretchen walked in, and Elizabeth realized it wouldn't be necessary. Brandy, Elizabeth said upon seeing her Park Shore friend. Hi there, welcome. What a surprise. Brandy was wearing big sunglasses, a silk scarf around her head, a flowy gray wrap, likely cashmere, around her shoulders. Elizabeth, hello, she said, and they hugged and sat down. Brandy placing her big straw tote bag in her lap as if she were hiding behind it. She took off the scarf, the sunglasses. I'm sorry for all the cloak and dagger, she said. I just didn't want anyone to know I was coming here. It's so embarrassing. It's fine, Elizabeth said. Are you having some kind of problem? Some digestion thing? Like most medical professionals, Elizabeth had been working in the field for so long that basically nothing regarding the body's biologic functioning or malfunctioning embarrassed her any longer. It's okay, you can tell me. Oh, actually, no, Brandy said. I mean, the petebog thing. It sounds very interesting, but I'm not here for that. Okay, then why are you here? Brandy took a big, deep breath. I had an epiphany last night. An epiphany? I was in my quiet room. Have you seen my quiet room? It's this special room in my house just off the living room at the end of the hall. It's my oasis. I go there when I need to get away, to be alone with my thoughts. Sounds nice. It is nice. I find that I need a place to recalibrate, a place to eliminate all the noise and get aligned with my next level self. Mike built it for me, my quiet room. It's where I do my affirmations, listen to my subliminals, light my intention setting candles, visualize. Do you have your own private place? A room just for you? Our apartment is pretty cramped, but have you had a room like that, your own special retreat? Elizabeth thought about it for a moment. There was a room in my grandfather's house in Connecticut. Every summer, no matter where we were living at the time, my family spent a month at that house. It's this huge estate in the woods with a pond and a tennis court. Oh, I'll bet it's beautiful. There was a room on the third floor that nobody ever used, and I would sometimes hide there to be alone. Yes, that's exactly what I'm talking about. That kind of place. And here's what I recommend. Close your eyes and picture yourself in that room. Really try to firmly believe you're in that place, okay? Elizabeth nodded. The last time she'd heard that room at the Gables had been demolished, along with the rest of the third and fourth floors. In the years since Elizabeth had left, the Augustine family estate had been systematically guillotined. But of course, Brandy didn't need to know that. Okay, Elizabeth said, I'm picturing it. Make this a regular practice of yours. Feel yourself in that room and spend some time mentally reflecting. Reflecting on what? Things you want, things you need, things that would solve your troubles. You can call it prayer or you can call it meditation. Whatever, just picture what you want your life to be in the future. I've been doing it quite a lot lately. And yesterday I was there in my quiet room and I had an epiphany. It was like this big intuition bomb, like a sudden download from the universe. What was it? You remember that drug you were testing, that love potion? Yes. Well, Brandy said. She took a deep breath. I need it. You do? Elizabeth, I need that love potion. But why? My marriage, it's in trouble. It is? Really big trouble. I don't understand. You and your husband, you two are perfect. I know it seems that way. Renewing your vows every year, going on romantic dates. I've seen the photos on Instagram. Yeah, well, don't believe everything you see on Instagram. You guys, renewing your vows is notoriously, it's like the death knell. Like, whenever you see someone like a celebrity couple renewing their vows, you know their marriage is like gonna be done so. And I say this like knowing that Brooklyn Beckman's and his wife Peltz, whoever the hell, they just had renewal vows. They're not gonna last. They were married a year. Where was I? The truth is, we haven't been good in a long time. How long? Long. I had no idea. Can I tell you a secret? Of course. Last year we had well, let's call it a little spot of infidelity. A little spot. Oh, a little smidge of cheating. Yeah. See, Mike was out of town on a business trip and he met someone. And, well, he insists it happened only once and that it'll never happen again. But I still cannot get it out of my head. Okay, who else is picturing Via from Miglia? Up in the air. I'm so sorry. I know it's unproductive to think about it this much. I know it absolutely sends the wrong vibrations to focus so powerfully on a negative thing, but I can't help it. Elizabeth, I got so bad that I actually installed this app on his phone to track where he is. No kidding? I'm not proud of it. I'm just terrified he's having another affair. Whenever he's gone, I'll check up on him and now she pulled her phone from her tote bag, swiped a few times. Here we go. It looks like he was at the office for about 90 minutes. Then he drove home at an average speed of 32 miles per hour. And now he's downstairs taking no steps whatsoever, which probably means he's playing Call of Duty. Wow. The app was designed for parents to keep track of teenagers, but it works well for this purpose too. Okay. Brandy tossed the phone back into her bag, hung her head. It's pathetic, I know, and creepy. I really want to stop having these thoughts, but I feel so angry at him, just furious. Like every time we go on one of those dates, we barely talk. And we smile exactly once to take a selfie that I can put on Instagram so I don't disappoint my followers who would be devastated if they found out that I have this shit marriage, that I'm completely unable to practice loving kindness and forgive my own husband. They lose all faith in the universe. And I have a responsibility to them and to my kids, of course. And so I go ahead and smile real big and take the selfie. And meanwhile, my brain was screaming, Elizabeth, you have to help me. Elizabeth took Brandy's hands in hers. "Mm, I'm really sorry. That sounds hard. Have you tried going to a therapist? We have, sure, but it's the same problem. We talk and talk and talk about the affair. We focus on it so much, and I really believe that if you focus your attention on something terrible, you'll attract more of it. And we are already surrounded by so many terrible things, so much negativity, so much menace in the world. So much bleakness creeping in everywhere. And if you let even the tiniest bit of it into your life, Brandy, suddenly on the verge of tears, stopped for a moment, took a deep breath, composed herself, then continued. Focusing on a problem preserves the problem. In your mind, I prefer to talk about solutions. Whenever I'm faced with a dilemma in my life, I ask myself a simple question. What would my next level self do? I mean, would the version of myself who's conquered this problem still be sitting around moping and obsessing about it? No, of course not. That version of myself is out living her fabulous next level life because she took action. And that's why I thought of you. I wish I could help. I really do, Elizabeth said. But the drug is simply not something we give out like that. There's a process involved, interviews, it's all quite rigorous. And the treatment is not officially approved by any regulatory body. It's still in the very earliest phases of research, and there's no guarantee. Listen, Brandy said, I will owe you so much. I will be in your debt forever, please. Elizabeth considered it for a moment, what it would mean for Brandy to owe her a favor. Elizabeth's latent worry since moving Toby to Park Shore Country Day was that he might start having his meltdowns and tantrums in school. And while public schools had resources and professionals devoted to addressing behavioral problems, private schools tended to have a little less tolerance. They could simply insist that problematic students not return next term, no questions asked. And this fact troubled Elizabeth that Toby might be summarily expelled and then forced to endure the new kid in school ordeal all over again somewhere else. But if Brandy were in her corner, the leader of the Park Shore PTA, the school's biggest fundraiser, the administration might be a little more accommodating if Brandy asked them to be. I'll be right back, Elizabeth said, and she left the room, headed to the office storage closet, plunked out a pink bottle from the small refrigerator there, and returned. She sat down across from Brandy and placed the bottle on the table between them. On its label, it said only this and friendly Helvetica. Dopamine receptor D4/7R polymorphism neurotransmitter number 9. Here's how it works, Elizabeth said. You believe you're angry at Mike because of the affair, obviously, but it's also possible that the affair was a trigger for a larger underlying subconscious condition. And maybe it's this root condition that we need to treat. And then she gave Brandy the long and involved explanation that she gave all her clients who were undergoing this very treatment, that their feelings of restlessness and tedium and loneliness and general marital blah, those urges toward anything at all different and exotic, that impatience and resentment they felt towards stasis and wedded monotony might not reflect any real objective problem in their marriage. In fact, it was possible that all of these feelings could be explained by a biochemical feedback loop created eons ago within the most nomadic pockets of hunter gatherer humans, those ancestors who migrated the farthest or whose lives were most precarious, evolution had, over the ages, imprinted their very genetic code with exactly this compulsion, a suspicion of sameness. Those Stone Age humans who 60,000 years ago wandered away from the African breadbasket, walked through the Fertile Crescent, traversed the Indian subcontinent, traveled the distance of Asia on foot, crossed the land bridge to Alaska, who kept walking south, tracking game, avoiding the ice, following the seasons, scrounging, starving, moving on, always moving on. For these tribes, staying in one place for too long was literally a death sentence. And so nature selected for people apt to be on the move, people unafraid of new situations, people who, in fact, craved and needed new situations. And the evidence was right there in our DNA, in the 11th chromosome, in the DRD4 gene, a dopamine receptor whose genetic sequence in most humans repeated either 2 or 4 or 7 times. This last mutation, what was known as the 7R polymorphism, being strongly associated with novelty seeking, risk taking, openness to new experiences, stimulation, craving, even impatience, infidelity, promiscuity, impulsiveness, a strong desire to leave all things under the umbrella of what might be called exploratory behavior, and the 7R variant was seen most often in people whose ancestors were the most nomadic, who walked the greatest distances, who traveled the farthest away from home, who then bequeathed this genetic legacy to those who came later, creating people whose very biology pushed them towards something, anything new. It's just such bullshit. Why do people have to make up reasons for, like, well, actually, your husband cheated on you because this person and they're hunting for a buffalo in the sub-Sahara. Shut up, Elizabeth. Her husband's probably secretly gay. Well, these people are probably like Mormon or something, and he can't be like, I'm gay. I like musicals. Mm. In other words, Elizabeth told her patients it was possible that hypoactive marital attachment disorder, a name for everything, did not reflect an actual problem within their marriage. It might just be that they were experiencing the cognitive dissonance of living a settled life with a migratory brain. Take one pill an hour before you spend time with Mike, Elizabeth said. It's possible that you may eventually start to feel a change. Thank you, said Brandy, all smiles. She stashed the bottle in her tote bag and hugged Elizabeth tightly. I've been worried about this for so long, and I had no idea what to do. And then you showed up out of nowhere with this answer. And well, it's a pretty unconventional answer, sure, not really what I was expecting. But, when the universe sends you a robo, that's right. Hey, you should come to my house this weekend. I'm having a gathering. There are people you need to meet. Great. Who? It's a neighborhood group. We call ourselves the Community Corpse. I organized it shortly after Mike's unfaithfulness. I was going crazy at the time and felt like I had to do something take action, inspired action. So it's a group of people who live in town, and we all work to make our town better, to up level our little place in the world. If you're moving to Park Shore, you should definitely know them. Tell me you'll come, please. Yeah, okay, sure. Perfect. And Elizabeth, she said as she patted the tote bag where her new pills resided. Thank you. You're welcome. You are such a good friend. I'm so pleased you're in my life now. You and I, it's like we're vibrating at exactly the same frequency. A kiss on the cheek, and Brandy was off. What Elizabeth did not tell her, and what she had not told any of her other subjects, nor would she tell them until this research was complete, was that these pills contained nothing or nothing special. They were biologically inert, just sugar pills, and that medical sounding condition, hypoactive marital attachment disorder, was also a fiction. And even that story about nomadic wanderers and their genetic legacy was just a tapestry of miscellaneous facts and theories stitched together into a persuasive but scientifically unsupported narrative. Yeah, I wasn't persuaded, sorry. This whole thing was nothing more than an elaborate placebo. And yet, according to the data Wellness had so far collected, the charade often worked. It was effective for uh, approximately 40% of patients. Roughly 40% reported a brightening of their mood, a weight lifted, a new feeling of marital openness and optimism and relief. And these reports were backed up by blood work whereby the same patients showed altered levels of oxytocin and cortisol and other important neurological markers associated with mood, love, anxiety, and stress. In other words, the patient's subjective self evaluation matched up with their objective brain chemistry. Something had biologically changed. Elizabeth was always mindful of the specific words she used during these exchanges. She told her clients to take a pill and then she told them that they might start feeling better, but she never actually said it was the pill itself that would make them feel better. Her clients, of course, inferred exactly that, but Elizabeth was careful never to literally say it because she knew the pill could not make them feel better. The pill couldn't do anything. It had no active ingredients. So she wasn't lying per se. She was being honest when she said she believed they could be cured. It just wasn't the pill that cured them. What cured them in the end was belief in the full context of the encounter. The pills they assumed would make them feel better, but pills of a certain weight, 500 milligrams, that felt appropriately substantial. Pills of a certain color, bright red, that looked therapeutic. Pills that were in capsule form, which people believe were more powerful than tablets. Pills that were stored in a refrigerator, which people believe were more powerful than room temperature pills on a shelf. Pills prescribed by a medical seeming professional in an office with an exterior sign and interior layout sign designed to be maximally reassuring. All of these factors finally, or all these factors meeting the patient's own strong desire to heal which produced finally the a confidence that they would be healed, a kind of confirmation bias that was the true and only source of this medicine. It was its single active ingredient, belief. Her patients were cured because simply they believed in the cure. The next chapter. The Augustine family's large historic Connecticut home is named the Gables because famously it has a lot of them, gables, at least 14, big and small, jutting out chaotically on each of the structure's 4 floors. Some of these gables parallel to one another, others at sharp angles, making the house appear from a distance like a scramble of triangles and pyramids, like it's some difficult and abstract math object, a wood and stone dodecahedron right there in the Connecticut hills. The Gables was built in 1865 by Elizabeth's great great grandfather, a man with particular and idiosyncratic architectural ideas. It's the kind of old New England mansion where every room has a story and most of the rooms have names. On the first floor alone, there's the Morgan Room, named after J.P. Morgan, who had, during a vacation in the summer of 1902, carved his initials into the underside of the enormous fireplace's enormous mantle, and the Vanderbilt Room, which features a framed handwritten letter from Alice and Cornelius Vanderbilt inviting the Augustines to join them for summer at the Breakers, and the Cleveland Room, where hangs a photo of Grover Cleveland taken in that very room when presumably it was named something else. And then there's the portrait room, home to the slightly larger than life size paintings of the patriarchs of her family tree. Alvin Augustine, her great great grandfather, who rose from total poverty to become a railroad industry tycoon. Cornelius Augustine, or no, Everett Augustine, her great grandfather, a textiles tycoon. Cornelius Augustine, her grandfather, a precious metals tycoon. Oh, thank you, Jerry. Oh, the light on these. Let's have that. Yeah, that one right there. Should I turn on another one? Hold on. I have a red one. No, because this one doesn't have a light, and then this is a. Do you see like a red tinge on that one? Maybe. Okay, Cornelius, a precious metal tycoon. It is an important family fact that each generation of Augustinian tycoon did not, as her father often tells her. Oh, thank you, Mary, again. Rest on his laurels, but rather bravely made his own way in the world. Each entered some brand new industry, and with the family's typical creativity and pluck. Thank you, Terry. Conquered it. It's a story about hard work and determination and success. A grand story for this equally grand house. Elizabeth's father loves giving guests a tour, explaining the significance of each room and telling the same tales every time to the various CEOs, various bureaucrats of significant government departments, chairmen of various boards who often descend on the Gables for summer visits. He'll guide them through each important room on the first floor, then up to the second, where all the rooms are bedrooms named for guests who have allegedly slept in them. The Walt Whitman, the Robert Frost, the Andrew Carnegie, the Meyer Guggenheim, the John Singer Sargent, the Henry Frick. Long before Elizabeth learned any of these names from either books or museums, she knew them here as plaques on the walls of the Gables, the Augustine version of trophy heads from wild game hunts. She has always recognized the importance of those names, the function of those names, how they tell a story about her family beyond its obvious accomplishments, that her family is not only successful but also significant, inseparable from the progress of the nation, a family that motors the nation forward, inextricable, powerful, prominent American. Guests Guests have always had a fun time choosing which bedroom to stay in, but there are certain rooms and certain gables that Elizabeth prefers. These are the servants' quarters up on the third floor. Three little bedrooms, only one with a window. A small bathroom, and an abandoned kitchenette. These rooms are walled off from the rest of the house. The only way into or out of the servants' quarters is the spiral staircase, 2 stories tall, that leads down to the pantry off the kitchen on the first floor. It is a design that makes clear how the home's architect thought the home should function. The servants would enter and exit through the side door, stay unseen in the kitchen, then retire to their separate and sovereign little bedrooms so that their employers could be always oblivious to their presence. Elizabeth imagines that they didn't live in the house so much as haunt its outskirts. The family no longer retains live-in servants, and so this room is always empty, which is ideal for Elizabeth, who prefers to be alone. This is where she goes to read, to daydream. It's a late July morning, and Elizabeth is at the Gables for her family's traditional 1 month summer stay. And she's hiding up there in the servants' quarters because she awoke with that unnamed melancholy that always accompanies and complicates this particular day. For today is her birthday. She is 14 years old, and she's spending her birthday, as she always does, at the Gables with her parents. Such is the tragedy of a summer birthday that is celebrated in isolation from friends. How she longs to spend one birthday with friends, how she longs for that matter to have friends. She has changed schools so frequently that her whole life she's never had a chance to know people for however long it takes for them to care about your birthday. She imagines herself as a small, forgettable blip in other people's more stable existence. At least that's the pitiful way she tends to feel on the morning of her birthday, hence the hiding. She's sitting under the window on the floor, her back against the wall, reading. Next to her is a stack of books borrowed from the library at school. She had checked them out before the summer, partly to pass the time on these long days, partly to get a head start on next semester when she'll be taking certain advanced upperclassmen courses in economics and philosophy and political science, for which she needed special permission to enroll, being a mere incoming freshman. The econ teacher was a special stickler on this front, requiring her to write a paper this summer on the invisible hand. And she understands that all she really needs to do is regurgitate a little Adam Smith, just write a slavish thesis in praise of self interest in laissez faire free markets. But she's decided to widen the scope of her inquiry, to attack it from many new and different angles. And so this paper has expanded into a large disquisition on the grand subject of rational choice and human desire. And so this summer she's reading some Adam Smith, yes, but also some Jeremy Bentham and some Thomas Hobbes, some Descartes, some Plato, some John Stuart Mill, some William F. Buckley. This last one recommended to her by the poli sci teacher who has little frame pictures of Ronald Reagan on his desk where other teachers have pictures of their own children. And in a meaningful bit of happenstance, she is right now reading a passage on the question of desire. What do people want? What makes people happy? And the answer seems to be simply more things, more stuff. The natural desire of the individual for more goods is how Buckley puts it. And this feels meaningful because today is Elizabeth's birthday, and this is what she knows to expect: more goods. Her father, every year on this day, overwhelms her with goods, an annual spending spree she is not exactly looking forward to, despite what William F. Buckley says about people's natural desire. Last year, it was that big haul of expensive outdoorsy gear. This after Elizabeth had fallen in with an amateur ecology club at her previous junior high school in the Hudson Valley, and she'd spend her Saturday mornings volunteering in the Catskills, repairing trails, taking water samples from streams, examining animal tracks or bird nests, sketching the colorful mushroom that she discovered upon the rotting trunks of fallen trees. Then her father found out about this new wilderness hobby, and that summer, his birthday present to her was an ultralight backpack and ultralight hiking shoes and stretchy waterproof leggings and a rain jacket and wind pants and collapsible water bottles and dehydrated trail meals and a headlamp and a compass and carbon fiber trekking pants, and wool socks and sun protective hats. Mm, and scale to weigh all of it. Her father explaining that real hikers kept their packs at 10 pounds or less, always for speed and endurance reasons. Further, her father had purchased matching equipment for himself and announced that their goal for the upcoming year was to bag at least a dozen of the Adirondack high peaks, a quest that lasted exactly one mountain when somewhere halfway up the Algonquin, Elizabeth completely lost sight of him. He was walking that fast, and because he was carrying the map, she didn't know which way to go when the trail split and thus had to sit down and wait. And he was annoyed that he needed to double back for her, and they lost all that time. And there's no way they were getting to the peak now, so they turned around and began their descent. Her father making occasional comments all the way to the parking lot about who between them was the real hiker and who was not. After which she stopped all forest activities completely. This year, at her new school, she had joined the tennis team, and apparently her father had found out about this new interest too, because sometime in the last year, he'd had an actual full-size tennis court installed in the backyard of the Gables. When he saw it for the first time at the beginning of her stay here in the summer, he said, "Surprise!" And she smiled at him and thanked him, even as she felt her tennis enthusiasm suddenly wildly plummet. It always happens this way. Whenever she takes an interest in something, her father showers gifts upon that interest, which makes her lose the interest completely. So, no, she's not exactly interested in more goods. What she's most interested in right now is a note she's been reading and rereading all summer, a note from her new friend, Maggie Percy. They'd worked on the school play together, got to know each other while building sets for Pygmalion. On the last day of school, Maggie had slipped her this note inviting Elizabeth to come with her family to New Hampshire on their leaf peeping trip in the fall, exuberantly explaining how wonderful this trip was and how Elizabeth absolutely had to give them the pleasure of her company. Maggie also gave her one of those origami paper fortune tellers that the two of them liked to make. They did this all the time at school, folding flat sheets of paper into. Oh, thank you, Rob. Yeah. My sister used to make those all the time, those fortune teller origami things. You go like that. You ever do that in school? I don't know how to make them. She could probably make it to this day if I asked her to make it. Mhm. Or which boy you would marry, or how many children you would have. To go to New Hampshire this autumn. And the hilarious thing about it is no matter which paper quadrant Elizabeth unfolds, the answer underneath is always the same: yes. She smiles now at the thought of it. A friend close enough to warrant an invitation like that. She returns to William F. Buckley to his place on the pile. She leans out the window and lets the cool morning breeze brush across her face. She wishes she could be up here the whole day through, alone, undisturbed. She would read her books and write letters to Maggie and make her own funny fortune tellers all the way till twilight, when she'd lie on the floor and stare at the ceiling and listen for the nightly riot that comes from above, the scratching and clawing and fluttering of wings from the fourth floor For a few years now, nobody has been allowed on the fourth floor because of the infestation up there. A colony of bats that migrated down from the attic and overran the home's upper level. It happened sometime after the fourth floor had fallen out of use, after Elizabeth's grandfather passed away and the house stood empty for much of the year, used only sporadically by assorted members of the family coming here for summers or holidays. Elizabeth's father had put tarps over everything on the fourth floor and locked it all up and didn't think much of it until the following summer when they first began hearing a disconcerting squeaking and scratching noise at dusk and dawn and realized that at some point, while they weren't paying attention, the fourth floor had been seized. It's a nest year. At the end of summer, the exterminators come and wipe out the horde, bombing the fourth floor and attic with poison, blocking every way in or out. Every tiny entrance with screens and insulation and plaster and caulk. And yet, every year, the bats return. Sometimes 100 of them, sometimes 1,000. One exterminator sent up there came back reporting huge stalactites of toxic, poisonous bat shits. Well, bats aren't bugs. Shimmering under his headlamp's light. Why did it shimmer? Because it was filled with fine iridescent insect wings. Ew. Ew. How beautiful. Thank you, Terry. That's an image that has always stuck with Elizabeth. She imagines just above her head a million bats hanging upside down, asleep, while below them sit great mounds of guano exquisitely glittering in the morning's dappled light. She likes the ambivalence of that, a scene both beautiful and profane. But now she hears her parents calling her name, and the daydream is broken. She goes running down the spiral staircase, down through the pantry, and into the kitchen, where she finds her mother all dressed up, black slacks, a sharp gray blouse, pearl earrings, and it's exactly this kind of little thing that on this day brings out Elizabeth's strange melancholy. That even on her birthday, her mom has other things to do, other places to be. She's off to an art auction in New York City. I wish didn't have to go, sweetie, but I'm expected. Then leaning in toward Elizabeth and whispering, "There's a chance the mayor's going to be there." Her father, meanwhile, wants to know what Elizabeth would like to eat for her special birthday breakfast, and Elizabeth blurts out her favorite thing, banana pancakes, before she notices that a bowl is already out, batter already mixed, a waffle iron warming up on the counter. "Oh," her father says, "I was making blueberry waffles. I thought you'd like that." "No, you'd like that," her mother says to him. "That's your favorite, not her favorite." "Well, how was I supposed to know?" her father says. "Maybe if you asked her first," her mother says. "Maybe if you paid attention to your own daughter." "Hey, at least I'm sticking around for her birthday," her father says. "At least I'm not abandoning her." "Oh, do you want me to stay, sweetie?" her mother says, turning to her. "I can stay if that's what you want." "And do you really want banana pancakes?" her father says. "I can go to the store, pick up some bananas, throw out that batter, start all over if that's what you want. She looks at them both, one then the other. They always seem to do this to her, make her feel as if just telling the truth, just saying what she honestly wants is selfish and horrible. It's okay, she says. Waffles are great, Dad. And Mom, you should go to New York. It's fine. We have all month to hang out. Mhm. And they smile the broad smiles of parents let off the hook, and her mother goes to catch the train. And her father finishes the waffles and leaves Elizabeth to eat them alone, returning with many birthday presents wrapped up in silver paper, tennis skirts and tennis blouses and tennis shoes, all of them bright white, and tennis hats and tennis balls and a tennis bag, within which is a new tennis racket, a Dunlop black with green triangles pointing up its neck. It's made of graphite, he says. That's the same stick that Steffi Graf uses. Wow, Elizabeth says, thanks. Come on, he says, let's see how it works. So they change into their tennis whites and take to the court in the backyard. He's bouncing on his toes from foot to foot and whipping his own new graphite rocket over his head, loosening his shoulder. He's been taking lessons, he tells her. The guys at the club call him the wall, he tells her, for how often he gets their shots back, which is always. Elizabeth nods and plays against him wordlessly, not talking even during the changeovers, speaking only when she calls out the score before each point. Otherwise, she stays silent and listens, for her father finds it necessary to point this out with the authority that comes from shallow knowledge. Every mistake she makes, and she makes a lot of them, the way her father plays, it's like winning the match is only a secondary concern, far less important than making every point as miserable as possible. He's a junk baller, as her tennis friends would say. His shots coming at her with so much spin that they hit the court's dusty surface and take off in a strange directions, sometimes away from her, sometimes into her. He slices the ball with such force and at such extreme angles that watching it float back slowly through the air, it looks more like an oval than a sphere. The round ball battered into donut shapes via outrageous RPMs. He does not attempt winners, does not even make her run, just hits these exasperating slow balls right at her feet over and over. The balls whirling with backspin or side spin, and she lines up to strike them back, intent on blowing at least one good forehand right by him. But the balls grab the court and bounce away, and she lunges for them, and she knows she looks like the most ridiculous person in the world. He doesn't simply want to win. He wants to win while also making her look foolish. And she does look foolish. She mishits the net, and even if she does, by some miracle, return a ball to his court, it is never with any real pace or intention. And so her father easily hits her another twirling, gyrating shot, grunting as he takes his swing, carving the ball in some new way such that it bounces in yet another exasperating direction, and their match continues in this fashion for roughly the next hour and a half. The 15 love. Uh, um, By the end of it, she feels as if she's boiling and she's fighting back tears, and she can't even look at him as they approach each other at the net for their wordless, mandatory sportsmanlike handshake. Then he tells her to get cleaned up because they're going to the mall. And so an hour later, Elizabeth is in the passenger seat of her father's BMW, her new tennis racket in the seat behind her. He asks her about school. about the classes she's enrolled in for the upcoming year, and she ticks them off one by one: AP Economics, AP Philosophy, AP Political Science, AP Physics. What's AP? He says. Advanced Placement, it's honors course, like a college prep course. He nods, grips the steering wheel a little more tightly, silent. It's a well known family fact, well known because Elizabeth's grandfather never let anyone forget it, talking about it whenever there was an opportunity, that Elizabeth's father was not cut out for the classroom. He barely graduated from high school and never went to college, so AP classes would have been out of the question. I'm finding it really hard, Elizabeth says. Maybe it's a little over my head. I don't know. I'm having to do a lot of reading this summer to catch up. Her father remains silent. I'm also taking theater, Elizabeth says. Not AP, just plain theater. Theater, he says. Why? I don't know. I like the people, I guess. Plus, I took this personality test last year and it showed that maybe I'd be good at it. Oh, so it's theater now, he says. That's your new thing? She is aware that she and her father had a similar conversation last summer when she was at that school in the Hudson Valley and had other interests. Last year it was ecology. She was going to be a forest ranger. Your problem, he says, is that you haven't found your calling. By the time I was your age, I knew exactly what I was going to do. It's a story he loves to tell, how he barely skated by at one of those fancy boarding schools with all those nerds and eggheads, none of whom had a clue about how the real world operates. All of their noses stuck in books, and while they studied their theories and abstractions, he was already out starting actual businesses, making real money, and thus had no time for the tests and quizzes and other bullshit of school, which is how he explained being so bad at it, school. He eventually started a company called simply Acquisitions, and as far as Elizabeth could tell, all it did was buy certain businesses, scramble them up in significant ways, and at a later date sell them. He said it was like playing with blocks, but on a global scale, that every company in the world was simply a structure made of many discrete units, like toy houses built of blocks. And so when he audited a company, he didn't care about the company so much as he cared about its blocks. And his great ability was to see how one particular block among all the other blocks would be more valuable in a different house. And so he'd acquire a company, liquidate all but one small unit of that company, add that unit to another company, and sell this new structure at an unconscionable markup. This, of course, triggered outrage and lawsuits from all those abandoned and liquidated parts, but he generally ignored that and left it to the attorneys to clean up. Anyway, this was his calling, to identify the stupidities and blunders and inefficiencies of the world and exploit them. What's your calling? He asks her now. She shrugs. Not theater, he says. The problem with doing theater is that it's a career with no guarantees. You could study your whole life to be a playwright and still never make it as a playwright. But if you study banking, presto, you're a banker. If you study the law, you're a lawyer. Leave the art doing to the geniuses and prodigies. You need to study something practical. But I like it, she says. Well, if you really want to go to the industry, then don't be the playwright, be the producer. Don't own the play, own the theater. When everyone's digging for gold, it's best to be in the shovel business. Understand? Unless you don't like shovels. Irrelevant. The shovels are a means to an end, Elizabeth. Take your great great grandfather. Do you really think that Alvin Augustine cared one bit about condensed milk or railroads? No, he cared about getting rich. But I don't care about getting rich. Spoken like someone who's already rich, he says. And anyway, it's not the money itself that's important. It's what the money gets you. What does it get you? Status, ease, comfort. But most of all, it gets you freedom. Freedom? The freedom to live your life as you see fit, to depend on no one, to live without constraint, to walk free and own no superior. He says, now quoting Walt Whitman. She knows he's quoting Walt Whitman because This very quote is etched into a plaque at the Gables, the one hanging outside the Walt Whitman bedroom. Most people, he continues, live small lives inside small boxes, but that's not us. Walk free and own no superior. Remember that, Elizabeth. Words to goddamn live by. She nods and they fall silent until they reach their destination, whereupon he encounters the backed up traffic and creeping chaos of a mall parking lot on a Saturday, and a dark mood seems to overtake him. Frustration and anger and animosity blaze out of him. He is seized by two mutually exclusive imperatives. The first is to quickly finish the ordeal, to be out of the car as quickly as possible so he no longer has to abide all these other people, the slower drivers who can't seem to make up their fucking minds about where they're going, the shoppers with their big bags walking four abreast right down the middle of the goddamn road. Fuck you! He keeps screaming at them. Fuck you! Whoa. And then he grows angry at the roads themselves, angry at the mall's very engineering, how a mall parking lot isn't designed as an easy to understand grid, but rather as a kind of incomprehensible interlocking of complexity shaped mini lots at unusual angles that funnel cars to crowded nodes, where bumper to bumper traffic is more or less inevitable. Yes, this all seems to agitate her father a great deal, and Elizabeth wants to tell him that he could avoid all this agitation so easily by pulling into the first open parking space he sees, but he does not do this because his second imperative seems to be to nab a spot up front, close to the mall's entrance, a sort of VIP spot that he keeps circling and circling the parking lot for, each time growing more impatient and more disbelieving that a space has not yet opened for him, like he's cursed, like this is the particular way the universe has chosen to punish him. And Elizabeth is in the passenger seat, thinking about that word, freedom, thinking that this right here, this cycle of circling and complaining in the parking lot, this is exactly what her father wants freedom from. He wants to be free of other people, free of their interference, free to do as he pleases without any obligations to anyone. It strikes her that what he calls freedom could just as easily be called domination. Fucking finally, he says, when a space opens up, a real close one right next to the handicapped spaces. He shoves the gear shift into park in a way that seems intended to teach it a lesson. He grabs her tennis racket and says, "Let's go." Once inside the mall, he walks quickly, uninterested in spending any more time here than is absolutely strictly necessary. They go into a sporting goods store, and her father hands the tennis racket to the salesman and says, "This doesn't work." The salesman frowns. "Doesn't work? She can't use it. She keeps making errors. You said it would work. Maybe it's too heavy, you think?" After which they go into the bookstore, her father asking the clerk, "Do you have any AP study guides? They're for my daughter here. She needs a bit of a head start." And they go into a clothing boutique, her father saying, "My daughter here needs some new dresses. I'm having a business associates over the house, formal but not too formal." Elizabeth hasn't said anything this entire time, has merely allowed herself to be led from place to place to place, and her father seems to finally notice her silence, and he looks at her and says, "Why are you so sour?" And when she shrugs and remains quiet, he turns to the saleswoman, who is currently picking out dresses, and opens his arms wide in a "why me" gesture and says, "I buy her all these presents, and this is how she treats me. Teenagers, eh?" And then they're finally leaving, Elizabeth carrying two bags of clothes and two bags of books, her father carrying another new tennis racket, spinning it in his hands. She follows behind him as he walks onto the access road outside the mall, not even stopping for the slow-moving traffic, becoming exactly one of those pedestrians he had been cursing only an hour before. When he gets to the car, he stops and stares at it, his head cocked, and when she catches up to him, she sees what's happened. The driver's side door of his bright white car has a small dent in it, and within the dent a smear of blue paint. He stares at his dinged door for what feels to Elizabeth like a very long time. then stares at the blue van parked in the neighboring handicapped space, a big blue van filled with complicated machinery that is probably some kind of wheelchair ramp or lift. Perfect, he says, just perfect. Elizabeth doesn't dare say anything. Very quickly and without making any eye contact, she rushes over to the passenger side of her father's car, dumps the bags on the floor, gets in, closes the door, and buckles herself in as if everything is totally normal here. And she stares straight ahead so that she does not have to watch what she knows will happen next. She hears her father's footsteps outside the car as he paces around the van. Then she hears his sudden grunt, the same sound he makes every time he swings a tennis racket, and then a loud and violent crack as her new racket and the van's windshield both shatter. Oh my God. He opens the door of his BMW, tosses the crumpled racket into the back seat, sits behind the wheel, and, still not looking at her, says, I have a job for you. Okay. I usually pay interns to do this kind of job, but if you don't appreciate free things anymore, maybe it's time you work for them. Doing what? Discovery, he says. He takes out his wallet and removes a $10 bill. He gives it to her and explains that she has to go to Sears, buy a tape measure, and come back out and measure every disabled parking space in the mall's lot, all of them in the whole lot. She will measure the widths of every handicapped space, and she is instructed to note in particular those spaces narrower than 96 inches, which is the ADA required width for handicapped parking spaces, even if the spaces are only a half inch shy of the mandated 96 inches. Her father wants to know about it. I'll be back in 2 hours, he says, and he leaves her there alone. And so she buys the tape measure and goes to work measuring parking spaces and finds that of the mall's 23 disabled spaces, two are not quite wide enough. One is 95 inches, another 94, a fact that delights her father when he returns and pays her minimum wage for 2 hours' effort. The following Monday, his lawyers issue a class action lawsuit against the mall on behalf of every disabled driver in the country, and he emerges a few weeks later with a quick settlement large enough to buy, among other things, a brand new BMW. And that's the end of that chapter. Okay. The first thing that really should have put Elizabeth on notice, the first clue that something a little odd was happening on this night, was a certain strange declaration early in the evening, during the hors d'oeuvres hour, regarding the Ebola virus and how it spreads. Elizabeth had come up to Park Shore tonight to attend a meeting of what Brandy had called her community corps. Jack was home watching Toby while Elizabeth was here in Brandy's large home visiting with these people from Brandy's group, all of them right now standing around the dining room table watching CNN on a nearby television while also idly eating from a big spread of health conscious snacks, a veggie tray with hummus, marinated tofu, several varieties of potato chip things made from ingredients that were not in fact potatoes, beet chips, kelp chips, chips of ancient grains. The news that day was all about the Ebola outbreak now cascading through the small towns and villages of West Africa. The really big story was that an American doctor who had been on some kind of aid mission treating Ebola patients in Liberia had himself caught Ebola and had been promptly evacuated from Africa and flown back into the country, becoming in the process the very first Ebola patient within the United States, and he was now traveling in an ambulance at high speed to a specialized medical facility in Atlanta. CNN was showing live footage taken via helicopter of this very ambulance in a motorcade of other emergency vehicles. Their lights flashing, racing down some interstate passing everyone, and the people around the hors d'oeuvres table were riveted, silent, watching the scene unfold. What if it crashes? Someone finally said, and everyone nodded. This just doesn't seem safe. Couldn't he have been treated where he was? Did he really have to, come back? I hope they have him in a bubble. I hope they melt down that ambulance. I feel for the guy, I really do. But didn't he sort of bring this on himself? Well, he spent all his time thinking about the virus, and then he got the virus. It shouldn't be a surprise. The universe gives you whatever you put out there, equal and opposite reactions. It's simple physics. Which made Elizabeth, who had once taken AP physics at a very good school, stop chewing on the carrot she was currently eating and cock her head like, huh? But the moment passed quickly. Brandy was soon turning off the television and herding everyone into the living room, where they all took their places on couches and love seats. Brandy saying, "Thanks for coming, everyone. Let's get started now." And then she walked over to Elizabeth and stood right next to her and put a hand lovingly on Elizabeth's back and said, "You know how sometimes you meet exactly the right person at exactly the right time in your life. Well, that's what happened with me and Elizabeth. She showed up at the very moment I needed her. It was like, wow, pure synchronicity." She's gonna be pissed if she finds out it's a placebo. And then everyone in the room was smiling at Elizabeth and waving at her. There were 10 of them at tonight's meeting, 6 women, 4 men, mid 30s to mid 50s, all of them with these open expressions of trust and reassurance and happy aplomb. Elizabeth smiled and waved back. Brandy explained that this particular group had started as just a bunch of like minded people who did their best to do good things around town. We love Park Shore so much, and we want to keep it beautiful. Keep it exactly the way it is for our kids, Brandy said. So we're really active in the community, and whenever something comes along that might jeopardize what we've built here, we try to meet it with our positive vision. Jeopardize, Elizabeth said. What do you mean? Oh, there was that store that tried to open downtown, the vape store. Can you imagine a vape store right where our kids would see it? We got this squashed right away. And that restaurant, what was it called? The one where the waitresses dressed like schoolgirls? Twisted Knickers, said someone in the group. That's the one. They tried to open a branch, and we were like, no way. I see, Elizabeth said. But I hope this doesn't make it sound like a bunch of scolds, Brandy said. We're really a positive group, I promise. We try not to focus on negatives. The more you think negatively, the more negativity you attract. I mean, look at the internet. People on the internet are always howling about things they hate. And all it does is create more of those very same things. No, we consider ourselves more aligned with Mother Teresa. Okay, we'll end it there for tonight. No, we'll end it until Sunday. Mother Teresa, because it is Thursday. Mm. Yeah, I'll twist your knickers. Since the mall was made before 19. Yeah, probably. What was she, 14? And she was probably at this point born in like the 70s. I bet malls were so cool at that time though. Ugh. Hey. Ugh. Neighborhood Karens. Well, everybody likes to have a what did I do to my bags? Everybody likes to have a group for something. What was I gonna say? Oh, I wanted to make a comment about Elizabeth. She's Could have told her parents what she wanted. And don't give me the because Toby was like, "No, I don't want this. I don't want that." So she could have said what she wanted to eat. She could have at least tried. Maybe, I mean, they're not telling you everything. Maybe the dad would have like beat her with a tennis racket, but it just seemed like she's like, "Oh, they make it sound like I'd be horrible if I said what I wanted. Like I want my mom to stay." And I say this because it sounds like she doesn't even tell her husband like why she's upset. Like because he helped her. I don't know. It just seems like she keeps her mouth shut, fine, whatever. But how are you gonna keep her mouth shut and then internally rage at people like not knowing like what you want or whatever? Like it's so easy to just like say what you want. I don't know. Maybe I just say too much. Like I would just say whatever. Maybe that's me, but I see her I see her just creating her own problems. But anyway, we pick it up there on Sunday. Call me tomorrow. This one's getting ready to get up. She's like, "Oh, I guess we're done reading." I love you. Good night.